Hello and welcome to Hilltop Stovetop, the show that teaches you how to make fabulous meals in an ordinary kitchen. My name is Ellen and I'll be your hostess through this journey. We'll be making great meals that your family and your friends will enjoy, and we'll be teaching you what to do with leftovers, assuming that there is any, because everything's going to be great. Okay, now we're ready to start cooking. So the very first thing you're going to do with an omelette is get all of your fillings ready. Because omelettes cook very quickly, you don't have time to stop halfway through and chop some more things. You've got to have it all ready to go. And we're going to categorize our fillings into basically 4 parts. First thing are the things that need to be cooked. So things in this case like our mushrooms. It could be something like onions or peppers, or meat that needs to be cooked, like if you were cooking some bacon or something to go into this omelet. So that's number 1, things that need cooking. Number 2 are things that need warming up. That includes our ham. It might also include if we did herbs or spinach or something that just needs a little bit of a warm up, doesn't need a lot of cooking. The third thing, of course, we've got our eggs. Number 3, though, is the things that need melting. So that's our cheeses. We've got this cheddar cheese today. If you're lactose intolerant, go ahead and put some goat cheese in it or some soy type cheese. Or if all you've got are the little squares of cheese, go ahead and use that. We're going to grate this cheese. But if you don't have a grater, you can just thinly slice it. And then there's our garnishes, which could be, in this case, the fresh tomato and the parsley. But it might be salsa, it might be something like a hollandaise sauce, just whatever your tastes dictate. All right, so first things, we're going to do our little mushrooms here. Again, taking our great knife here. And you don't need this whole package. We're going to take out about that much. Now don't worry that you've got this leftovers, because mushrooms, believe it or not, are something that you can, what I do with a package like this, I put it in a Ziploc bag and pop it in the freezer. And as long as I'm cooking something with them, like they're no good thawed out afterwards because they get kind of mushy, but as long as I'm cooking with them, they're perfectly fine for a month or so in the freezer. So now I've got this nice sharp knife. Now remember, get a good look at my hand here. We're using the claw. You don't want your fingers in the way of the knife, but if you use your claw to hang on to your mushrooms, and we'll try to get under the camera here, then you can just bring the knife down in front of your knuckles and you're not endangering your fingertips. And I think a lot of people are very nervous about cutting things, but by keeping your fingers out of the way, that is a wonderful way to do it. The other thing you can do is to just put your hand on top of the knife, again, keeping your fingertips out of the way, and just chopping back and forth like this. Okay. And if you're really nervous, and so those mushrooms are about right, if you're really nervous about it, you can get these lovely little devices. I'll just reach behind me here and we'll get this. So this is great for mushrooms and things like that, because you've got a spot where you can put the knife in between the little prongs. A little bit of a nuisance for something like these mushrooms, but it's a great device, but it's an extra. It's not a need to have, it's a nice to have. And so we've got our mushrooms all chopped up, which is just fine for that. Next thing is going to be our ham. This is probably a little bit more than what we need, but with that one, again, we're keeping the claws on our fingers, and we're just going to slice it into little cubes. And then we use the knife, this nice big knife, turn it all around like that. There we go. So we've got a good batch of ham ready. Then we have our garnishes. So we've got our parsley, which we can kind of put into a little bit of a clump. Again, watching our little fingers out of the way. And I'm no great chef. I'm not real fast at this, but I am careful with it. And we can dice these up nicely. So there's our parsley ready to go, and our tomato. And the cool thing about this knife is it's got a sharp enough end on it that we just take the stem out and slice that up. You see what I mean about having a nice sharp knife? Even though this is a beautiful ripe tomato, it's not hard to slice through and it's not being munched. Okay, so there's all of our chopping done. Now the next thing we need to do is to grate our cheese. So I've just peeled back the plastic a little bit here. You try not to touch too much of the cheese because that's exposing it, so that you end up, the part you put back in the fridge is more likely to get kind of moldy. And now I have a grater that is part of what's called a mandolin, which under normal circumstance would just have this nice stand. A little hard to do this and keep it on camera, so I'll just keep it folded up. And we're going to grate just enough cheese. Now, if you want, it's perfectly fine to buy the pre-grated cheese, the stuff that you would put on pizzas or grilled cheese sandwiches. That's fine too if you happen to have some of that. And again, you can go low fat, you can go with skim milk type cheeses, or you could go with a Swiss cheese, which is lower milk fat content. And I think we probably got just about enough cheese there. Okay, pop that into the sink. So there, we've got all of our ingredients ready to go. Now we're ready for the eggs. And we're going to get our salt and pepper and our mixing bowl for the eggs. Now we'll go start with our eggs, and you'll notice that I'm cracking them on the counter, not on the edge of the bowl. If you hit it on the edge of the bowl, that drives the edge of the bowl into the egg, and you're more likely to end up with bits of shell in there. I'm also not one of these people that does their eggs with one hand. So that's the large egg, and we'll get a little close-up here of the peewee egg next to that. So you can see the difference in the size of them. Peewee eggs are great if you're making poached eggs because there's less white and it makes a very nice poached egg. So there's 3 eggs. And we just take our, and oh, actually I should mention, I'm wearing an apron. That's really important part too. Anyway, so I'm going to just whip up these eggs. And I'm not going to do it with an electric mixer or anything. I don't want it too full of air. I just want them well mixed. And I'm adding pepper and salt. And I prefer to do the ground pepper because it's fresher. It doesn't take nearly as much for the flavor. This is the one that's already pre-ground. They can lose its zip after a little while. So a little bit of salt, we're just going to whip that up. And again, like I said, you can use a fork to do this if you don't have a whisk. But basically what we end up with is a nice homogeneous kind of look to this. It doesn't have a lot of air to it at this point. Just make sure that the whites and the yolks are mixed together. So now we're ready to start cooking. So we're just going to... First thing we want to do is to get things warmed up. So for the burner, which is where we're going to start, you don't want it to be too hot. Eggs are very delicate, and if you cook it too fast, that's when they're going to get rubbery and tough, and you don't want that. So on my stove, I put it between 4 and 5 out of 10 on that scale. The other thing that you want to get rolling is you want to get your oven onto the broil setting. And with broil, that's where just the top burner comes on, not the bottom, so that you're grilling things from the top down. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to put a little bit of butter in this. You might prefer to use olive oil or avocado oil. I like a little bit of butter. I think it adds a little something to the taste, but it doesn't have to be very much, just a little knob like that. And even though this is a non-stick pan, I still want to have a little bit of I'll say lubrication in the pan here to keep things going. And we'll just melt that down a little bit. Very first thing we're going to do, remember we talked about what needed cooking, what needed warming up, and what needed melting. So the cooking part in this omelet is going to be the mushrooms. So we're going to put that in there and get them. There we go. For that part, I might turn it up just a little bit for the mushrooms, but then I'll turn it back down again for the eggs. And as you cook mushrooms, there's going to be a certain amount of moisture that comes out of them. So you don't want to crowd mushrooms. Make sure that they're going to cook better if you can spread them apart a little bit. And we'll just let those simmer for a little bit. So there you can see the moisture coming out of those mushrooms. We don't have to have them thoroughly cooked through, just partially cooked, just keeping in mind that these take a little bit longer than everything else in the omelet. So that's why we started this first. And they're starting to change their color just a little bit. So at this point, I think we're ready to add the items that needed warming up, which in this case was the ham. Put that in there. That warmed up. We're going to turn the temperature back down to that between 4 and 5 because we're about ready for the eggs here now. My spatula out of the way. And here we go with those beautiful eggs. And we're ready. And we're just going to go dump it all in. Scrape out the bowl. Okay. Now, first thing is, we're just putting things back from the corner, or from the edges, into the middle. And this is the part where it goes really fast, folks, so we gotta be paying attention. So everything is centered in there. We're gonna let it sit maybe 15-20 seconds. And then we're gonna take the spatula and slide it in and lift. So hopefully we got a good shot there where you can see where it's coming up and the raw egg is sliding in underneath. And this is what's going to give you your fluffiness, because it's almost getting layers in here. And we're going to keep going around and around and around and tipping the pan just a little bit. And you can see how it's getting deeper as we go. Everywhere we go, there's just a little bit more running in underneath. Okay, almost ready. Okay, now at this point, the stuff on top doesn't want to run in underneath anymore. So I'm going to take it off the burner, turn off the burner so I'm not burning myself. And this is the bit where we put the melty stuff on. So we're going to put the cheese in on top. Left that around a little bit. So now we've got the cheese on top and we're going to pop it into the oven. And that's nice and warm. Now we're going to watch it very carefully, but one thing you don't want to do, as tempting as it is, you don't want to turn on the light in your oven. Because remember when you were a kid and you had an easy bake oven that cooked the cake with a light bulb? Same thing can happen in a big oven where you have a light bulb on one side, things will cook unevenly. And then here's Coco just seeing what we're up to here. This is my dog Coco. Cheese is starting to melt. Just a few seconds is all it, well, maybe a minute and a half. And make sure that you have a pot holder handy, because remember that metal handle on that frying pan is going to be hot when we take it out. But with your pot holders, make sure. Oh, thank you, Coco. Make sure that you have them up high, not just lying on the counter, because if they get wet, they lose their insulating value, and you can burn yourself quite easily. So now, if we look at this here. Oh, yeah, there we go. So look at that. You got a good close-up of that. And we have melted cheese, and you see how it's kind of browned in around the edges. So that's all it takes, is just a few seconds like that. We just run around the edge with this spatula. And as you run around, flip half of it over and then right away onto the plate. And there you go, a perfect fluffy omelet. Then we take our little bit of tomato here, sprinkle it over the top, and our little bit of parsley, just kind of from the height. And there we go, folks. It's a perfect omelet. So now, as I said, this is an omelet that is big enough, as long as I've got a salad and we're having this for lunch, I can share it. So we're going to slice it in half, and you can see inside we've got some beautiful ham and mushrooms in there. I'm just going to sprinkle that over that. A little bit more garnish. And a little bit of this beautiful salad. Again, this is the time of year when you've got all this wonderful fresh stuff. I've got tomatoes, I've got cauliflower, I've got purple cauliflower, of course lettuce, green onions, and radishes. So there we go. It's a beautiful, healthy lunch. Thank you so much for joining us today while we learned about omelets, and I hope that you'll come back and watch our next upcoming episode about making pasta primavera, another wonderful fresh vegetable dish. And if you liked today's video, please click on the like and the subscribe button. And if there's something that you would like to learn how to cook in this everyday kitchen called Hilltop Stovetop, then put a comment in and we'll see what we can come up with in future episodes. Nice to see you all. Bye-bye for now.